Okay, thank you. Thank you, Scoops. That's amazing. Okay, well, our speaker today is, I love Megan because she's like this energetic bomb that walks into a room. And, you guys all remember when you were like in the 30-ish to 40-ish age bracket and how much energy you had?
No.
I know you do. Yes. And Megan is that kind of ball of energy right now because she's like in the peak of her prime and her performance, and plus her ideas and her what she brings forward. So today when I asked her to speak, she came up with the absolutely perfect presentation. The power of community and connection. And that's just exactly where we are going with Adam. And so Megan Militello is a wellness advocate, speaker, and founder of the Elevated Community, which inspires growth through connection and outdoor adventures. She's originally from California, has lived in Hawaii, and now calls Alaska home. She believes in the power of community to help individuals build confidence, step outside of their comfort zones, and elevate their lives. When she's not working, she enjoys exploring the outdoors with her fiancé, Kyle, and their dog, Poncho. So please give Megan Militello.
Hi again, everyone. Thank you for having me here again. Dawn, thank you for asking me. This is lovely. And I feel like the topics that I've talked about have transformed over time. It's really, I feel there was a self-transformation and building my own confidence and building my own community and really developing to now seeing how powerful communities are and the different ways that I have been part of different communities and grown different communities or contributed to those different communities. So thank you for having me here. How many of you have ever felt truly alone in life? And not just like physically alone, but maybe you didn't feel saw or understood. And how many of you have felt the magic moment where you do feel that community, where you come together with a group of people that support your same things? So that feeling of belonging, and that feeling of truly being seen and supported is the power of community. And it's a power that can elevate your life in ways that are never expected. So I'm going to share how that realization shaped my life and why community has become so important to me. So I moved to Alaska for almost 6 years ago, and at that time I was restarting my entire life. I left everything that I had known, my career, a failed relationship, and Hawaii, a place that I had called home for the last 12 years. And I used to say that I would never live in Alaska. My dad moved here 10 years before I did, and so I would visit for a weekend, visit for periods of time. He told me he was going to move here when I was stationed in Hawaii, and I was like, yeah, right, we'll see. And then he did. He came up and moved. And then my visits here, I was like, wow, this is nothing like I've ever experienced. I don't know cold. I don't know snow. I came up here a month after I got out of the Army for a whole month, and it was March of 2012. And if anybody remembers that month, that season, it was one of the highest snowfalls that Alaska, like Anchorage area, had had. I was jumping off of side railings just right into snow. There was no gap, right? So that was wild, and that was like, oh yeah, I probably won't ever live there. Very cold, not what I was used to. But then life has a funny way of changing those things. And 6 years ago, I ended up moving to Alaska in my dad's basement, and I had nothing. I had no community. I had no direction. I felt like I was starting from scratch. But that no community was already familiar to me. Like I grew up moving around a lot as a kid, going from living with my mom to living with my dad to joining the Army at 17, and then that Army was really the first community that I had felt. But even that, like, it's so big and broad, and you're moving all the time, and people are changing different duty stations like every 3 years, and your command is changing. And our closest knit group was my first deployment to Iraq, and then the second deployment. We had a lot of the same people in those both of those times. But you're really forced to be around these people, and like live around these people like for so long, to where that becomes your community. You don't have a choice, and you're finding things that are in common, or maybe not. And you can make it a positive situation, or you can like look at all of those negatives about it too, right? It's how we approach all of these things. So I was already familiar with that no community. I had a small taste. And so moving to Alaska with already nothing, it's like, well, how do I want to shape my life now? It was finally coming into that realization that I had that power, that I have the power of who I surround myself with, and what things that I am doing with my time, what I find valuable. So I didn't realize that me moving here was the beginning of this huge transformation. And it's where I really began to notice how community was important. So not long after moving to Alaska, I started Elevated Oats, which I've talked about here before. And soon after that, COVID hit. And actually, Adam Center was one of the first places that I also had a community. I would come on Wednesdays to the meditations, come to the full moon meditations, and maybe I wasn't ready to be like in a community with everyone, but it was taking those first steps of getting yourself into those situations where you're pushing yourself outside the comfort zone and trying something new, being around people that you know have something similar in common with you. So COVID made it even more challenging to find the communities, as we all know. We were very isolated, and through the process of building my business, I was able to get myself into the entrepreneurial ecosystem, find out different resources that were available in Anchorage or just Alaska as a whole, going to workshops, networking events. And networking was nothing I ever saw value in either. I was an air traffic controller, and what we were taught was, oh, your resume has to go through a computer. So really it's about the words that you put on this one piece of paper. So that actual connection was never valued. And now it's like, wow, the difference in having that network or having that community can be so impactful. So I had the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I started making friends that hiked and got outside and would go adventure, and that was a totally different experience, being out in the mountains with these people, being away from so much stimulation everywhere around us, like really being in nature with these folks. It just created extra depth that I hadn't had before. And so that closeness felt like a little hug to my soul, right? It was like something that I want to share with other people. I want other people to experience this as well. And my business, I started doing these monthly hikes just to get outside, to be like, hey, try my granola, like come get outside, eat my oats, right? It was like my out of the box marketing tactic, which ultimately was like huge. And the only reason I had done that was from someone that I met in the entrepreneurial ecosystem saying, hey, why don't you host a hike? And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. And she's like, you're already doing it. You're out there all the time. You're benefiting from this. Like, why not share that with other people? So Elevated Community was born in 2021, and we'd already kind of been doing it a little bit. But it didn't happen overnight. Like, that community didn't happen overnight. So about 2 years ago, along the way, I made some incredible connections, right, over this period now from 2021 and then just prior to that. So I want to share a few stories of different hikes or different experiences throughout this building that I've had. So about 2 years ago, I met Sue, and Sue is an older woman. She came on our hike. She doesn't have Facebook. I don't even know how she found out about what we do, because that's the only place that we were putting it. And she ended up bringing her friend Sandy, and Sandy brought her daughter Catherine. So it was a nice little group that would come and attend our hikes. And over time, they kept showing up. So it was like month after month they were there, and you start to learn more about them. You start to get those stories and experiences with that person. And we would have the pleasure of celebrating milestones now with these people, continuing to see them, continuing to meet them. Sue celebrating retirement. Catherine just moved to Wyoming to finish her graduate degree. And then she just came back, and Sue, Catherine, and Sandy all came on our first hike of this year and updated us, shared their love for the outdoors, for the community, with new people that were there in attendance as well. And then there's Brian. And Brian joined us in the summer of 2023 and came for a hike. He, again, kept coming, just kept showing up. And then I started reaching out to my people, and I'm like, hey guys, this is what we have. Where do we want it to go? Like, I can use help, I can use support. And Brian stepped up to the plate. He was like, yeah, I've done hiking groups before. These are the types of things I did in other places. Like, how can I contribute to making this even bigger and better? So he's been helping me with leading hikes for over a year now. He actually hosted one yesterday, and there was almost 30 people that hiked Campbell Gorge Trail. And what's really amazing about growing this and empowering our people to be a part of it is now I'm at home, or we went skiing yesterday with other friends, and I get on the internet and I see pictures from this event, and people are sharing, and it's different people that I don't even know. It's not just Brian sharing things from this event. It's Mandy who's like, hey, look at this group that I went on today, and all of these different pictures from their hike. So seeing how that ripple effect can really go out beyond, and how they express their love for what they're doing, is huge. Another person that I met was Joe, and Joe is like one of my closest friends now. Hangs out with my family, hangs out with my friends. He's like in the friend circle. And I met him through a woman that I knew that brought him to a hike. And it was just like, now we're just in the same place where we keep coming together, keep having that value that we're all sharing, that experience that we're all sharing together. And so all of these connections, it's like seeing neurons firing in the brain, right? You can see all these little sparks happening. Even though it's a big group, it's like small things just start sparking everywhere. And it's powerful to witness all of those things happening in an event and how those relationships can form. Something I forgot to mention about Brian. Brian met his girlfriend on top of a summit. Hike he was leading. I'm like, what happened? How did this happen? He's like, oh, I was leading this hike and I was on top of Target Peak, and that's when I saw her and started talking to her, and I'm like, wow, that is just amazing. And so to hear those connections be made, and to see the friendships, and to see the people keep coming back and keep building on those experiences is huge. So these community hikes were happening once a month. Sometimes I only had a few friends show up. And then other times we would attract over 50 people, which was wild because I never would expect it. I'm here, I'm waiting, people are showing up. Okay, it's getting to be a lot of people. I'm like, now I don't know how many people are gonna show up, right? So we attract a different variety of people, and it's outdoor enthusiasts that may be new to Alaska, and maybe they're looking for a community or they're looking for new friends. They want to get outside, but they don't feel safe really, because Alaska can be intimidating. The mountains, the wildlife, the wilderness, all of it. So we provide that safe space and then that place to create those connections. Even people that have lived in Alaska their entire life and maybe hadn't been into hiking or hadn't been into the outdoors or had been in Alaska their entire life, love to hike and just want to come and share that love with other people. We've had people that have never been on a hike in their life come and hike with us. We've had people that are afraid of heights that are summiting Flat Top and Peak 2 in the same day with us. So it's really amazing to see like what a community can do to help elevate someone or give them that confidence, give them that boost to do things that they didn't think that they would be able to do. We've had older folks, younger folks, diverse range of backgrounds that have come to our group, and everyone brings something valuable to the table. So over these last 5 years, I've learned that building community takes time. It takes consistency, just like the full moon coming around every month and always doing that same event. It takes courage and effort. It takes stepping outside of your comfort zone and seeing what happens when you engage with new people in new spaces. And you may not always click with people that you meet at community events, right? This is like trial and error. It's about putting yourself out there. When you attend these events that are centered around something you enjoy, value, or believe in, then you're more likely to find people of that similar mindset. Going to community events and actively participating helps create those opportunities for deeper connection. And you might not always meet your future best friend, but you're taking that important step of being vulnerable and authentic. And being the kind of friend that you want to have. That's also important. You can't just go to one of these things and then be rude and expect other people to just be nice to you, right? It's about showing up the way that you want to be treated as well. And then maybe at one of these events you are meeting your future best friend. So when I shut down Elevated Oats, I knew I couldn't shut down the community. It was so important for not just me, but the other people around me. The mental health side of things, how community and contribution really attribute to that mental health. And in Alaska, we already have a lot of the challenges with isolation, darkness, the seasons, the winter, getting outside during those times. It can help to have a group that supports you in doing so. So these communities, they can provide emotional support, reduce that feeling of isolation, and give us a sense of purpose. There's even been studies that show how strong social ties attribute to lower stress, improved mental health, and increased longevity. So when you're a part of a supported group, you're reminded that you're not navigating life's challenges alone, right? We all come together, we all can share something to move forward. So I want to take sorry guys, I didn't go with my slides well. I'm going to share an activity that we do whenever I'm leading one of the hikes. I try to encourage our other hike leaders to do it too, but when we get to our midway point, normally a summit, stop, whatever that break is, I like to take a moment to reflect on our week. So how do we bring that mindfulness aspect into just that outdoor group? And it's like, we're more mindful about what we're doing, about taking that time to be in the moment, about being with each other, fostering those deeper connections, and then taking this time to reflect. So we do rosebud thorn. Our rose is something positive that happened, and normally we just talk about the last week, just to keep it simple. But you can do this with anything. It's a great conversation starter. It's a great piece. We do it for our families after trips, events. I do it for work events, just to see like maybe there's something that we can learn, do better, or just see the different perspectives since we're all living in a different reality in the same situation, right? So sharing these reflections allows us to celebrate each other's wins, offer empathy for challenges that we're facing, and it's a small and powerful way that we can foster those deep connections. So I'm going to give you an example of myself for this last week. And then I would love for everybody to turn to a neighbor and share with them their rosebud, and thorn. So again, the rose being the highlight of the week, bud being something that you're looking forward to, and that could be absolutely anything. And then the thorn is some type of challenge that you faced. So for me, my rose of the week was skiing with my friends yesterday. We went up by the pass, and it was just, it's been beautiful days, clear days. The sun, when it hits you, it feels like an extra 20 degrees warmer. It was absolutely lovely. My bud, I'm I'm looking forward to going to New Zealand in March.
Ooh.
We got a family trip coming up. We got an RV. We're taking kids. It's gonna be great. And then my thorn. My thorn was probably that my Friday felt so long. Friday actually felt like 2 days for me. It was weird, and I was probably passing out before 9 p.m. But not a big deal. More of just feeling like my timeline was off now these last few days. Kind of a bonus because it feels like yesterday felt like Sunday. So I'll take it as a win, anyways. This reflection helps us with understanding maybe where we're going. You guys now know I'm going to New Zealand. Oh, maybe I went to New Zealand and I can share something interesting about that place, right? It's like, how can we create something a little deeper, learn about each other a little bit more, and then have something to connect on. So I would love if you took a moment to turn towards your neighbors and share your rose, bud, and thorn. We'll just take a few minutes. Thank you. Thank you for entertaining me. And hopefully learning something new about your neighbor that you didn't know before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Good. Yeah. Like this is
It's very invigorating because it forces you to listen because you know, instead of like going like, okay, what am I thinking of? And then you get inspired from somebody else. Going, oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. So as I said before, like we do this for a lot of different things. We'll do this at home after dinner, or when our kids are with us for 2 weeks and then they're going to go back to their mom for 2 weeks. It's like, what was the rosebud and thorn from these last 2 weeks with us? Or when they come back, it's like, what was your rosebud and thorn from the time with your mom? You know, just so we can learn something new, hear a story, get their perspective. And then even with work or any type of setting, this could be a very valuable tool to come together. Yes, ma'am.
Well, what you just said about you do it at the table or as a family.
Mhm.
Well, we live together. We just had a whole situation all week that was all of this. But by just asking him his perspective, what you just said, it's like, oh, I didn't catch that was where you were. Well, I was whirling around in this situation. You were whirling around your own way. But I just said, what you just said too is, we should do this every day. Yeah, we should say, what was your highlight? What are you looking forward to? What was your challenge? Because when you're with somebody all the time, you think you're knowing them. You don't know them as much as you think you do. It's like, oh, that's who you are.
And the intention.
It's so incredible.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
That's because you just said that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That's
Thank you for
great.
sharing.
Yes, like this is what we want, right?
That's great.
And we're all living in different like worlds and realities. We're all processing through different lenses of experiences and things that we've gone through and been through in life. So just taking that moment to reflect, it can really add more depth to everything you got going on.
What I liked about it too is it was concise. Like, you know, boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because that's, you know, how I operate, right? But, you know, I don't have to go through any big dissertation. I can just say, wow, this was it, you know? This is the highlight right there.
Nice and sweet.
Yeah.
Simple, sweet. And if you want to keep going
You
deeper,
can.
right, you can. Yeah, it makes it easy to have that with someone else.
But Dawn might add, but please don't.
We're in a group too, right? Like if we were a smaller group, maybe everybody goes around and says their rosebud and thorn together, versus it just being more of that one-on-one. Or I saw some groups of 3 happening, like great conversation starter.
I think by keeping it shorter also, I think a lot of times what happens with friends, they fucking dump on you.
Yes!
Well, I'm sorry, but after so many, times of dumping, I'm like, well, I'm not coming.
Right.
And it's not that I don't want to share or hear someone else's problem. I'm totally open for that, but I can't be the dumping ground every week.
And that is something I do notice too, is that if you're a super good listener, you know, nobody realizes the glaze that has just gone over your eyes because you're going like, wow, Do you want me to solve your problem for you? Okay, I can tell you how to do it. But,
Yeah.
you know, they just need that purging. And that's why it's so interesting. Laurel has the listening post, right? Or something like that.
You have a volunteer there.
Somebody to listen to you.
And
That's
there's,
awesome.
I put a poster up by the bathrooms because there's going to be doing a training in like, I think early April. So, yeah, to be
Cool.
a
Oh, cool.
volunteer for the listening post, yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, and then I have been in those situations. People don't even realize that they're dumping on you. They're just saying all the things that are going on. They don't realize that there's an emotional draw for the other person, right? And sometimes we have to say or just separate to protect our own emotional energy. Yeah, so that's really huge. I like the conciseness. Phil.
I might be a bad man, but when somebody dumps on me like that, I just kind of let them know that with all that negative energy, their problems aren't going to get any better. And if they meditate and start looking at the positive side of things, they'll have a lot less of that negative.
I think that's great.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and because some people don't see it, right? They're just like going through the motions or they're saying all their crap because it makes them feel better, but they're not thinking about what's actually going to alleviate some of this, help
Yeah,
with the
I pointed
healing.
that a lot. I guess that makes me antisocial.
Is that your rose, your butter, your thorn?
Sounds like thorn.
Yeah, I'm not talking too much. I just invite them to one of my meditations.
So community has this catalyst for personal transformation. It not only provides emotional support, but it inspires personal and professional growth. And so being surrounded by people who uplift and encourage you, foster resilience, and help you discover new strengths and capabilities. It empowers you to grow, take risks, and discover parts of yourself you didn't know existed. So when you surround yourself with people who believe in you, you're more likely to step outside of those comfort zones and try new things. So I've also seen this firsthand on my professional side. I do the community hikes, and I got a consulting job where I help manufacturers, and immediately everybody is just all siloed doing their own things. We all have the same problems and nobody's helping each other. So I started quarterly events because I could see the power of bringing people together when we have common problems or common things that we want to put intention into. We can do a lot more together. And so on that professional side, same thing. You can see the neurons firing, you can see the connections, and then the most impactful things have been when those people come together to help lift each other up, to collaborate, to share something else that they're doing, or share their audiences. So how do you find and nurture the right community? It starts with showing up and actively participating. But what does participation look like in practice? We kind of did some of it already, so good job, everybody. You're practiced. But here are some practical tips that can help you engage and build those connections at community events. So 1, be curious. Ask questions. People love to share experiences and stories. So a simple question like, what brought you here today, could spark that conversation. Share your story. Don't be afraid to talk about yourself. I know a lot of I have friends that are like, it's so hard to talk about yourself. Just talk about the things that you like and enjoy, right? This is how we can find other people that like and enjoy those same things. Share why you're at the event or what you're hoping to gain from it. Vulnerability will help other people feel comfortable and open up as well. 3rd tip, find common ground. Pay attention to common interests or experience. So if someone mentions an interest like in hiking or going to New Zealand, you can go back to that and dive deeper into the conversation. Number 4 is offer support. If someone shares a challenge or goal, ask them how you can support them. Community is built on mutual care and assistance. So I have a girl, there's a girl that I work with, Monique. Every time I'm on the phone with her, we're talking about business, we're making a plan. She gets off the phone and she says, is there any other way that I can support you? And I'm like, wow, I don't even know what to say right now to that. No, but thank you for asking. I'm like, wow, she just made me feel so good. Like, I really appreciate just even the thought of asking that question. And for the last tip, be the friend that you would want to have. Show up with warmth, authenticity, and kindness. Even small gestures like a smile or remembering someone's name can go a very long way. So when you attend events that center around passions or values, you're stepping into spaces where people likely share those same ideals. And it's not about forcing connections. It's about allowing them to happen naturally by being engaged and being present. So whether you're joining a hiking group or attending events like this, seek out people who inspire you, and you have to take that first step, right? One of my favorite lines is that the world is full of people waiting for someone else to make the first move. And so sometimes we have to be the one to do that. And once you find your people, invest into those relationships. Lift others up, be present, contribute to something bigger than yourself. The rewards are immeasurable. And I'll leave you with this. We're not meant to do life alone. We thrive when we elevate each other, and together we can grow, thrive, and connect to our truest selves.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure we have lots of comments or questions or yay.
Yeah, please.
Go, Bobby.
So what you're saying is we should all go out, create our own communities, and then merge them together?
Not necessarily, but you would be, I mean, we're in Alaska, right? Everything is like 2 or 3 degrees separation. I'm always surprised at how one community, I have people in this one that trickle over into this one. And so I think that we can be a part of lots of different things and sometimes merge them together. Bobby.
I just heard something yesterday that was really cool. It was a social scientist explaining an experiment. He got stooges to be on a plane flight with the subjects of the experiment. The stooges' job was to keep this person talking, the subject, find out as much as you can about them, but don't give up anything about yourself. So the instruction was, if they ask about you, as quickly as you can, change the subject and put it back about them. Then when the plane was over, those people were pulled aside to just do a random survey of how did you like the flight? And like universally, the response of the subject was, best flight I've ever been on. The service was amazing. It was just like there was a sense of community in the plane. I was with this person. We had an amazing conversation. And then at some point, the interviewer would start to say, who were you with? What did they do? What did you have in common? And the person very quickly would realize, I have no idea. And it was because they were doing all the talking. Yesterday, I was talking to somebody about coming here, and I just said, she's great, you know, and I've seen her talk 2 times before. She's one of my favorite speakers. Oh, what does she talk about? I don't know. I honestly can't remember. And what I concluded from that was, I mean, I'm super happy this was fun, and that's what I remember. I remember that in the last 2 times I came out of it and I just like, wow, that was really good. That was fun.
You were elevated.
And we remember the feeling more than we remember the content.
Well, that elevated feeling can carry out through whatever you're going to do for the rest of the day. We're not downer. This isn't a downer session we're having. We're not really depressed. We're having the upper session. So, you know, it just keeps going like a
I
rebel.
only could have tied it to the oats.
So, Bobby, you're okay. It doesn't matter if you remember it or not because the feeling is.
I wasn't feeling inadequate, but thank you for the validation.
So does that change our attitude on the talkative seat partner? that we get, on the airlines, like going, oh my goodness, are they ever gonna shut up?
Interesting game. Although I think this is a wonderful setup for the communication we'll be having after this.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
oh, completely.
Perfect
Yeah.
lead into our next.
So one of the things that you mentioned, Megan, was about how Brian found romance on the hike, right? You know what's so interesting with Adam is we have had the most romantic, like these two met here at Adam, and they were like little kids. These two, Skookums and Louie, reunited here at Adam. Jillian and Selena started their friendship on a hike up to Rabbit Lake, and they've become amazing friends.
Because of Adam.
Yeah, and we've had a few other romantic. Some worked out, some didn't, but that's okay. You two met before, right? You two.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, the thing is with community is when you are meeting with like minds and like hearts, it's fascinating.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kyle and I met on a mountain like years ago and came back together years later.
Mm.
Yeah, so so keep putting yourself out there, coming to these things. A lot of you I've seen at these events all the time. So this is great. You have a tight knit community.
Me too.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, so I'm kind of interested in your thoughts about this. Not to bring everybody down as everyone was talking, but like when you were talking about community and about putting yourself out there and being vulnerable to help that connection, right? Totally understand that. But how do you step out into doing that when you have that fine line between being an elevated person and aware that you bring your energy to other people, and maybe knowing that sometimes, throughout the year, you maybe not be in the highest of elevated mind states, and wanting to have people who want to maybe have a deeper connection with you, but when you start falling into those spaces, you isolate a little bit more because you have the awareness of, I don't want to be the person that does the dumping, and I don't want to be the person that brings the energy that brings people down, or because I'm aware of what it is that I'm bringing to the friendship. And while I want to be the friend that, if someone else is in that state of mind, of course, I'm there for them. I want them to bring it to me. But then I stop, you can stop yourself from being that person and going to the people, and then that's part of how you make a deeper connection, but you stop yourself from really being able to do that. So how do you where's that line? Where's that fine line between being able to connect on that level, but without being the person that everybody jokes about being the thumping person, when of course we're not meant to go at it alone, but you're also well, if I do it alone, then I'm not putting it on anybody else,
Totally.
And so
Totally.
I was just curious about your thoughts on that, just because of your presentation and everything, and so
I feel you.
Excuse me, but yeah.
Yeah,
I think I got it out in a way.
I think I hear what you're saying, and my best friend is very introverted, doesn't like to talk about herself, will isolate a lot, and me and her we talk all the time, right? We had our business together, and I had to learn from her with being open with me also, right? That's part of the vulnerability, is we're all human. We all are on this ride. We're all on this ride where we get to experience all of these emotions, and we're not always all great and good and at the highest peak of energy and always super positive. But that's where I think the community can help pull you out of that hole, right? When you're open about, now this is a hard time for me, I'm in these depths, the community can be supportive. And I know there's like a fear of judgment or not being supported, you know, but it takes time, it takes practice of putting yourself in that uncomfortable position and being honest, right? Because those people that we all, I'm sure, have gone through different times that are harder in life. We go through times where we're having a really shitty day, or we go through times where we doubt ourselves a lot, and that best friend can't always be the person in our head, right? Like, I have to rely on my partner to dig me out of that hole sometimes, or I have to rely on my family to dig me out of that hole sometimes, because my, you know, your mental mindset sometimes is not strong enough to get over that hump. But when you have people around you that can remind you that, I think that'll get us a lot further. But I know it's hard. It's not easy to do. But I do think that being a little deeper and more vulnerable with our mental health and the things that we have gone through, like my last husband had a psychotic break, and that was a huge eye-opener for mental health to me. I didn't know about a lot of stuff, but that gave me a completely different understanding and a completely different approach to people. So I think that when we share our stories, even if it's a little bit darker and harder to do, it does create that deeper connection, allows those bonds to form, and allow us to have that supportive system that can help us out of those holes. So don't stop trying. Courage is doing things in the face of fear, right? But it takes time. It takes time.
I have kind of a suggestion that might help. If you pick something that you're interested in, like me, crystals, and you have a crystal out, people will see it, they'll make comments on it, and that's a way to open up things for conversation. And also, I carry a bag of crystals around, and they're the ones for reducing negative energy or balancing it. And when I find somebody that's really upset, I use NLP on it. What I do is I put the crystals out there and have them pick one. And then I have them think of something that's really good, best time they had, and hold it and anchor it to that crystal. And then I talk to them about another experience where they had it. And when you talk to them about 3 or 4 different experiences, and then you say, okay, all those are anchored to that crystal. And when you're feeling bad and you want to dump on something, pull that crystal out and rub it. And what that does is it releases positive chemicals into your system, which comes around and makes it more positive. Whereas if you continue to think about the negative, it's releasing negative chemicals that come around. So the point is you're trying to change the chemical composition of your body so that you're happier. And it works really, really well. You are what you think about all day. And if I sit back and think that I'm the happiest person in the room, I feel sorry for the rest of it.
Great tip.
Good tip. Well, I like the concept of having multiple communities. I'm sure we've all met those people that I like to call them energy vampires, you know, that just suck, you know. And what I've learned, because I've had a pretty amazing life that's had many harsh challenges, but what's helped me is having multiple communities, because everybody, I have many little tribes, and different tribes can help me connect with what I need, and then I'm not, if I have that need where I need to be vulnerable, I need to verbalize, I'm not like emotion vomiting on the same person all the time. I have my tribes, and that has helped me through some pretty deep, dark nights of the soul.
And resources too. You said the listening
Post.
Yeah, listening
Yeah.
posts, like things like that, going using your resources, I think is huge. Yeah.
Well, you guys, let's give Megan a
Woohoo!
nice big.